Hey everyone, my name is Chris from Create Daily, and today I'm going to show you how to easily create this Vox style texture animation using Adobe Photoshop and After Effects. Before we jump in, I want to give you guys a quick tip on the tool I use to create the background for this tutorial. This right here is my Wacom tablet. It's a digital tablet that I connect to my computer for projects like this. I also use it a ton for rotoscope work as it saves me so much time. This isn't a sponsored video by any means. I just want to let you guys know what I'm using, so I highly recommend getting one for yourself. I do have an affiliate link in the description below if you're interested in picking one up. So let's get started by creating the background. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is create our abstract sketchpad looking background, and we're going to do that in Photoshop. So in order to do that here, I'm in Photoshop right now, and I have my paintbrush tool selected. I'm going to create a new layer. And then up here at my brushes, I'm actually using one of the Kyle dry media brushes here. This one's a very faint looking one, so we're just gonna stick with that. Right here, I'm just gonna hold down Shift, and I'm gonna just draw some lines. The reason I'm holding down Shift is because that's what keeps these lines straight. I wish I could draw this precise, but that's why I use digital tools like Photoshop. There's no real method to this here. I'm just keeping it really random. And if we want, we could also always erase some lines if we wanted to get rid of anything. So that's always an option too. If we wanted to get rid of something, I'm going to keep that, but just something to keep in mind. And in the example I showed you guys at the beginning, these lines are actually a lot more faint than how we drew them. But the advantage of starting off a little bit stronger is that we could always scale that back. So what we could do here is we could actually go here and drop the opacity of them. And you could see that with dropping the opacity, they look a lot more faint. Another thing we could do is click into our layer here and go to color overlay and actually make them a grayish color. So it's more similar to the example that I showed you guys, but there are different ways to going about this. Some lines are thicker than I would probably normally do on a paid project, but for the example of this tutorial, we'll just move forward. One last thing I want to share here. The reason why I created all of these lines on its own separate layer is that way when we bring this Photoshop layer into After Effects, we have two separate layers. We have our background here, which is this plain white, and then we have these lines. That way it's not combined, and we can change the color of the background or the strength or opacity of the overall lines that we just drew. So we're just keeping them separate. So let's jump into After Effects. All right, so we're in After Effects, and what we're gonna do now is bring in our sketch background. We will leave this as a composition, and we will drag this into our assets folder just to stay organized. And what we're going to do here is we already have our main comp created. So I'm just going to drag this background in here, and we created our background layer at a 4K resolution, but what we're editing in now is a full HD resolution. So the reason I did that is because when you scale out here, you see that when we have the 4K sized layer in a full HD composition, we have all of this room to move around. So it's a little best practice that I like to use, and it's pretty common, but we're just going to scale this down to 50 for now. All right, so here's where the fun begins. So what we're going to do now is actually start bringing in our animated textures, but we need to create them first. I'll just show you guys a quick example of what I made with the wood. So we have these flickering wood textures, 3 different pieces, and it's pretty simple when you look at it in the timeline. They're all at 8 frames apart. I did that because we're working on a 24 frame per second timeline. So they're all 1/3 of a second. So it's just very precise cuts, and they all just trickle in. Same thing with the leather right here. Very simple, but I left the concrete empty so we can make it together. So what I'm going to do here is go to our assets, go to our concrete. If you don't have any of these textures, I downloaded these from my Envato Elements account. But if you don't have an account, you could seriously go outside with your phone, take some photos of different textures, and create just about the same exact thing. So these aren't hard to create. I just happen to have an account and pulled some stock textures for this tutorial. So I have my textures here. I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to do Control-Shift-D, cut them. So now they're all at 8 frames. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and you see they're all pretty large. So I'm just going to scale them down here. Okay, bring that one down a little bit further. And what we're going to do from here is actually stack them. So I'm going to right click, highlight them all, right click, go to keyframe assistant and sequence layers. Just click OK. And this is what we have. Maybe make it easier for you to see. So now we have these 3 different textured layers, and say like, hey, like maybe I wanted this one to be first. All I would do is bring it here, bring this one down, bring it over, and then we can start with this one. So it's really however you want it to look. I'm going to be a little picky about how I want these to look, so I'm just going to make some adjustments here. Yeah, that looks good. I'll actually scale that one up a little bit. Nice. I'm liking the way these look. So because we already created our leather and wood working comps, we're going to go back to our render comp here where all of our faint lines are, and we're going to bring them in. And we're going to make them about, say, we'll leave them at 35. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to separate them out from one another, just so we have, as I showed you in the example, proper distance between each layer. So there's plugins and different ways you can go about this. I'm just going to keep this simple, and I know that, hey, like all of these are starting out at 960 by 540. So with the concrete, I'm going to make this, let's say 560 or even 360. So it's 600 pixels away. You know what? I kind of like 4. So they are 500 pixels away from one another. We'll put the leather on the right. So 960 plus 500, that is, I'm not good at math, but 1460, I think. Cool. So here's what we got. But the issue is that these abruptly cut off. So you're probably asking yourself, hey, why did we cut off here? Why didn't we animate these textures for the full 10 seconds like what we have in the render comp? Well, essentially, we really could make this a 10-second comp and duplicate the process and repeat it over and over again. That's one way to go about it. It's a little bit more the beginner method. I'm going to show you guys something just a little bit more advanced that isn't too advanced, and it's going to save you a ton of time. So that is with the loop out expression. So what I'm going to do here is highlight all of these, go to time, enable time remapping. We have this keyframe here at the end. I'm going to go up 1, create a keyframe for each one, delete the last keyframe, and now we are going to type in an expression, which is loop out. As you can imagine, what it does is it allows our layer to loop. So now you'll see in a minute here, I'll be able to drag out this layer. We'll just stick with the wood for now, and it loops out perfectly. It's a pretty cool shortcut. Something I really recommend. If you haven't messed with loop out expressions before, this is a really simple way to get into it, and it will save you a ton of time. So we're going to go here and go to right click, copy expression only. We'll paste it in here, paste it in here. Now when we drag all of these out, you'll see they all loop out perfectly. So once again, just a nice, just another little shortcut, but something that'll save you a ton of time. So now it's time to add more to our design. So what we need to do is figure out a way how we want to bring these textures into the frame itself. So I'm going to hide all of these, and to keep things simple, I'm going to write out a word, stay on theme for today's tutorial. Awesome. So all I did right here was just write in the word texture. All of our layers are still here, but what we're going to do is actually animate from the bottom. So we're going to start off with the text, and we're going to animate that out, and then animate our textures in replace of the word. So let me show you how that's done. So what I'm going to do is start it at about, let's say, a half second in. Press the position. Go up to about a second. Bring it all the way up out of frame. All right, this is what we have so far. It looks pretty boring. So let's clean it up a little bit. So what we're gonna do here is click on our position keyframes, and I have this plugin called Flow. It's basically provides you a bunch of presets that would help for different types of easing for keyframes. So I'm not going to dive too much into easing right now, but This is a linear keyframe where the movement looks boring. If we right click and go to easy ease, it smooths it out, and the movement itself just it's a lot easier, right? Makes sense. So if you don't have the plugin if you don't have the flow plugin, you could always do what I just did. So it's right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease, and then what you would do from here is jump in the graph editor, mess around with these handles a little bit, and see what you like. Since I have this plugin, I'm going to use it. So I like to use this one called Circ. It's the default one, but I'm just going to click apply here. And then here's how it looks. It's a little bit more abrupt right there. And looking at the curves, we see that it starts off slow, then the speed shoots up, and then it curves off again. So right here, we're actually going to make a cut with Alt bracket. And that's how it's going to look. And this is a little trick for this Vox style look, if you will. They don't always animate things from out of the frame into the frame. There's usually a cut during the animation. So that's what I'm trying to show you here, that we have this full animation where it goes out of frame, but we're cutting it at the halfway point. So we see how that looks here. And what we're going to do is take this anticipation with the beginning of this animation and then bring in our textures. So we have our textures here. And what I'm going to do is click P. We're going to go here. And then with these textures, I'm just going to bring these down. You don't have to bring them out of frame completely either, especially when you're cutting them, when you cut the layer in its actual animation while it's in motion. But just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm doing it this way. So we see how this looks now. So you kind of see where we're going, but what we need to do is add some sauce. So we added the same flow plugin or same flow preset that we used. Gonna animate out, and it's gonna look like this. Now we have the word animating out, and then the textures actually animating in. So this is looking good right now, but I think we can make it a little bit better. So what we're gonna do now is actually write in the words to complete our design. Awesome. I'm just centering this up as best as possible. For the sake of the tutorial, I'm not being super precise here, but I just want to give you guys a full understanding of kind of what goes into a design like this. I'm going to parent each text layer to what it's describing. So I'm going to parent the leather layer to the leather working, the wood layer to the wood working, concrete to the concrete working. So here's what we have so far. Now this looks a little bit off only because these layers are all starting at the same time. There we go. So this is starting to look a little bit better, but I think what I want to do here is actually shorten up the duration of this animation. I feel like this is going out for just a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is take all of our keyframes and I'm just going to bring them in a little bit. Maybe like right here. And we'll just take a look at our original texture text layer. And I'm going to look at the graph editor and see, okay, this splits right here. So now I'm just going to drag that down, drag these in sooner. There we go. So here's what we got. Awesome. This is looking even better. And what we could do too, if we wanted, we could even take these, give it like a little bit of a delay. I like this a little bit better only because it's not so obvious that it's coming from the bottom of the frame, like how it was right here. I like it where it's just a little bit off. We could even, so there's that like second of a flash, but it looks really nice. So now what we need to do is my favorite part, which is adding some sauce to this edit. So let's jump on in. What we're going to do here is click Alt on the position key keyframe and type in posterized time 6, followed by wiggle 222, comma 2. And what this is actually altering is the speed and the amount within the actual keyframe itself. So when we look at our texture right here, you see it looks a lot choppier. And that's part of the Vox look. It's supposed to look choppy. So it looks something like you would see in like stop motion. So I'm just gonna stretch this out just so you can see how it looks in full. But even at the start here, has a little bit of jitter, then it animates up and out. So that's how that looks. That's how you pull off that effect. And what we're gonna do here is right click, copy expression only, paste it on our working comps. And here's what we got so far. So because we added the posterized time, it's actually removing frames, and that's what's making it look so choppy. So before we were trying to eliminate making it look like it was animating from the bottom. Now we're back to that. So what I'm going to do here is actually just highlight all of these and just bring up the actual textures. There we go. Okay, now this is starting to look good. All right, next what we're gonna do is actually make a slight change to the background as we talked about in the beginning. So Vox uses a very like palish yellow a lot of times. So we're just gonna add a fill to our background layer, and we are gonna go find the yellow. We're gonna find a very, very, very faint looking palish yellow. I'm talking very subtle. All right, so now that we changed our background here, what we're gonna do is with our lines, we're actually just gonna go to our opacity and we're just gonna drop these down. So we're gonna drop this down to maybe like 28-ish. Let's see how this looks in our render comp. It's looking a lot more faint. I might actually mess with the color of the background a little bit too. Make it a little bit more white. Maybe bump this up to like a 40. Nice. All right, I like where we're at so far, but there's more to be done. So let's add to it. What we're gonna do from here now is add a subtle looping flicker. So I'm gonna go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. I'm going to label this flicker. Then I'm going to add a curves to it. I'm just gonna exaggerate the actual effect so you can see. Since this is a overall lighter design, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to tell. So I'm gonna just invert our background for the sake of this example here. I'm gonna bring up this curves effect and the opacity. I'm gonna alt click. I'm gonna write in posterize time 6, followed by wiggle. This time we're gonna do 100, 50. And what this is gonna do is actually create a little bit of a what you would see out of like a film grain, where it's just inconsistent and it kind of bounces back and forth. So if we go in here and look, some of these lines here, they jump back and forth. This is a very subtle touch. It's just that extra bit of sauce that could really benefit and make your edit overall better. I'm going to remove this invert, and I'm going to bring this flicker way down. It's like I said, it's good. It's supposed to be subtle, and I'm just gonna keep it at that. All right, what we're gonna do next is add some noise. So in order to do that, I'm gonna click Control Y. We have the solid here, 80, 80, 80. Click OK, click OK. We're gonna label this noise. We're going to, as you would guess, add grain to it. And then from here, we're going to view the final output. We're going to select a preset. They have all these built-in ones. We're just going to pick one of the Kodak ones. And then from here, we're going to change the size to 1.2, the softness to 1.3. So now when we look at this effect, you see it's all of these little dots, all of this little noise. So, but when you look in here, it's the RGB look, and we don't want that for what we're trying to pull off here. So in order to remove the colors altogether, we're going to add a tint effect. And that just makes them black and white. So this is before, this is after. Now what we're gonna do is change the animation speed. We'll make it to maybe like 0.2. It's much more subtle now. And just for the sake of staying organized, I'm going to pre-comp this and label this noise. And now what we're gonna do is drop explore some blending modes. So I'm just holding shift and pressing the plus button, seeing if we find anything that we like. There's this overlay here, and it's very subtle, very subtle. So I'm going to keep it on overlay, and then I'm going to drop our opacity down to 25. And for this, I actually don't want the overall noise to be on the textures themselves. I'm gonna bring all of these textures and bring these above, bring our noise below. We could leave the flicker above. Of course, this is a personal preference. You might prefer to leave it all on top as an adjustment layer. That's totally fine. And it's as simple as that. And that's how you create a Vox style animation. If you guys found this video to be useful, I kindly ask for you to leave a like, comment, or even subscribe. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.